LixTech was founded in 1999, and we are a software development company which provided solution in different areas of aerospace mechanical engineering, system integration, web-based application, data analysis, and website development. We were working and still working with different size clients, starting from US government to small private businesses. We work with United States Department of Defense. We work with different aerospace original equipment manufacturer. We work with MRO companies. We work with research organization. If you probably all guess, our experience lies in software development for the aerospace engineering, and we, I guess, specialize in application with the advanced web or desktop graphic user interface, visualization techniques which require complex engineering analysis or data handling. In addition to all of that, we develop, maintain, and support and provide training for AFGROW. Jim, can you do next slide? This slide summarizes very little, some of our experience and capabilities. And we have extensive experience in development and support of web-based electronic data management system for storage and access, technical documentation, data acquisition, data management, data sharing. As a subcontractor, we were responsible for design, development, and support of electronic data and document management solution for such organizations like Teradata, US Air Force, US Air Force Academy. Here's an example of some contracts that we were working on. One of those documents, the biggest example of those documents would be tear down data management system, TDMS. If you in any way involved with US Air Force, you probably know what it is. This is a big web-based database which is related to tear down data collection, status tracking, and reporting program. That's pretty much my 2 slides, and I will let Jim to continue.
Okay, thanks, Alex. All right, one of the biggest changes you'll see when you install version 5.4 is instead of just seeing the installation of AFGROW, now you'll also have an installation of our new Spectrum Manager. So we've combined both the AFGROW software and the Spectrum Manager programs into the same installation. So instead of having to download Spectrum Manager separately and installing it, it'll all be installed when you install version 5.4 of AFGROW. Now the framework for AFGROW, and I really want everybody to think about AFGROW as a framework because it contains many different capabilities and features, starting with our case solutions themselves. And you can see that what's highlighted in blue will have new capabilities in version 4 for each one of the modules that you see highlighted. Under their correct growth rate models, you'll see we have the Foreman equation, MIT method, the NASGRO equation, that's version 3 of NASGRO, and table lookup capability and the Walker equation. And you'll see table lookups highlighted as well. We've added, as part of this release, you'll see that we have a new database for table lookup models that we've taken from the AFMAT database. And for load interaction models, you see we all have the collision model, Jim Newman's fast train model, the SU model, Wheeler model, and the generalized Willenborg model. And none of these have been changed in this current release. They're the same as they were in the previous releases. And finally, in our tools, we have the ability to view output in Excel, cycle counting option, truck counting twice, residual stresses, time dependence, crack initiation, and corrosion effects. And the crack initiation is highlighted because we've added several new materials. The parameter database is extended to about, I think, 35 materials in that crack initiation capability. So as many of you probably know, I'm sure you know if you've used AFGROW, this is a kind of an overview of the different views in AFGROW. We'll have our toolbar, our main frame, animation frame, output frame, which also includes a notification list for any time that you've exceeded the capabilities or the recommended limits for K solution. It'll notify you of that, and then of course a status bar at the bottom. Now, I want to go over the new features and capabilities, at least the major ones here. The biggest one is the new advanced solution for combinations of corner and through cracks at a hole. For version 5.3 and earlier, when you had two corner cracks at a hole in the advanced model and one of the cracks transitioned through the thickness, we had to automatically transition the second crack. So there was a little penalty there because we didn't have the solution when you had the combination of corner crack on one side of a hole and the through crack on another. And now we do, and that would include axial bending and bearing solutions. So that was a very big deal for us in this release. So that was our most important, I think, enhancement for version 5.4. In addition to that, we added a 2D multi-site damage capability. This is something that's been asked for a long time, and the problem with it doing it was that we had the solutions for 2D or through cracks under axial load for just about any geometry you'd want, but the problem was when we had the bearing load, fastener load in a row of holes, the fastener load at adjacent holes actually is manifest as axial load in the adjacent holes. So it became quite a complicated situation because it depended upon the hole size, the hole spacing, and so forth. So for us to be able to give you a solution for any geometry you might come up with, it was a little bit of a problem. So we spent a lot of time trying to come up with a good solution to that, and now we finally think we have one. And so now in the version 5.4, you could model a row of holes, up to 9 holes, with a primary and secondary crack at the centered hole, and then a secondary crack on the outboard side of each adjacent holes, and again up to 9 holes. We will probably extend that in the future to include secondary cracks on both sides of adjacent holes, but I don't know, but maybe the next release, we'll see. We also include the ability to do multiple through cracks in a row. That was a fairly easy capability, so we added that too. Another big deal for version 5.4 for people that might be working in the pipeline industry is we're sometimes asked if we have API 579 compliant K solutions for cylinders and pressure vessels, and now we do. So version 5.4 includes 22 new pressure, weight function, and polynomial based solutions for pipeline models. As part of that, we also added the core last burst pressure model that goes along with the appropriate API 579K solutions. Now we've also added a preference option for updated finite width correction for cracks, open holes. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But just quickly to say that the Newman finite width correction for the traditional classic models for corner cracks or surface cracks at holes, we found there were some issues when your width was small, your WRD goes below 6. We started to see issues, and it became a bigger problem once we dug into it. So I'll explain that in a little while. We also added a new weight function solution for single and double through cracks at a hole. We also allow you now to, for a corner cracked hole, you can do stresses that vary in the C direction instead of just for, in the past we had all the part through cracks only allowed you to do the stress variations in the A direction. So this is another big addition. We added an option for spectrum filtering as a function of cycle count. That's where you can change the values of your spectrum, not only as a function of crack length, but now you can do it as a function of cycle count. We added the ability for AFGROW to recalculate residual K at each spectrum stress level. So actually, when you by going through your spectrum, we can now break that down for each level. And we have a local material database for the table lookup. I mentioned that a little bit ago in the last chart, but we now include the database in the installation. We have 35 new materials, as I also mentioned, for our correct initiation capability. And there have been a lot of enhancement and bug fixes for the comm interface plugin models. And as I said, the Spectrum Managers is now included with the installation. So here's the picture here of when we have the case with a corner crack on one side of a hole and a through crack on the other. Again, this was a very big breakthrough for us because the possible combinations and the ability to do axial bending and bearing was very difficult, but now I think we finally got it handled and it works very well. Now, the multi-site damage capability is a new category under, if you look at your model, your classic models, what you saw before was standard and weight function. Now you'll see standard weight function and special cases. And when you select special cases, you can select either MSD for multiple through cracks or MSD with multiple through cracks at open holes. Actually, this shouldn't say open holes. This should say at holes because we do have fastener capability, bearing capability. So I mentioned about the finite width situation, and there was a recent effort as part of the Engineered Residual Stress Initiative working group, looking at case solutions, comparing different case solutions to finite element results. And what we discovered was when you looked at really detailed finite element or very high resolution finite element models for cases where your width to hole diameter ratios went below 6, that the Newman-Raju width corrections would end up being too low, and that was a problem. It's one thing if you're going to be conservative, but it was a lot more concerning when we found out we were significantly non-conservative. And for a case we looked at with a WRD of 2.4, we were seeing differences as much as 9% too low. So that got me concerned, and so we went through a big effort to see how we could make improvements. And what you see on this chart is this kind of a summary of what it would take to correct the Newman through crack solution for the A direction or the C direction to make it correct. So the trend would be if we looked at a through crack width correction and for the C direction, what we would have to apply as an additional correction to make it work, you'll see that as a function of A over T, how that trend goes. And then in the center, you'll see that the width over diameter, hole radius over thickness, and A length over C length, as those parameters increase, the correction tends towards 1. And as they decrease, you can see how that changes. And so that works both the same for the A and C direction. But another, like I said, the big takeaway here too was that the corrections required for the two directions are not the same. So when your W over D goes below 6 and your R over T goes lower and A over C goes lower, the difference between the A and C direction can become very significant. So the current Newman-Raju width correction does not account for that. The assumption is that the correction for both growth direction is the same, but in some cases it won't be. So we've added capability in AFGROW in our preference menu. You can either use the standard Newman-Raju correction as the default, and people told us that they wanted it done that way so that any predictions you made in the past, you can get the same answer if you do it in the future. But if you wanted to apply my additional correction, you could choose to do that as an option. And for cases with a when WFD goes below 6, or you might have A over C that goes lower, you might want to consider doing that. Now, the new weight function solution we have 3 of them. We have the weight function solution for the single edge corner crack, and we have a solution for a single through crack at a hole or a double through crack at a hole. So those are new weight function solutions. And for the corner crack case, the big news here is that this is the first model that we can use the stresses changing in the C direction instead of the standard A direction that's been in the past. Now, this is our new tagger lookup growth rate database. So if you go into the table lookup option and you open up the database, you'll see it's, I think right now we have, in this release, we have 87 materials, steels, aluminums, titaniums, we have a lot that's been fit. And we continue to add to that. At this time, I think we're up to above the, more than 90, and that'll just keep getting rolled into the future releases. Now, this is another feature that people have wanted for a long time. In your output, if you wanted to have a plot file, a data file, or whatever, even an XML file, and you wanted them all to be placed in the same folder. So if you were doing some sort of analysis and you said, I want to create a folder for this analysis, I want everything to go there. Well, if you click on the option synchronize, you pick your file name, it will synchronize the first part of the file name, and it will put all of those files in that same folder. So that's I guess people wanted that for a while, so now it's available to you. Here's just a screenshot of some of the new API 579 models. You can see we have pressure based, and we have weight function or polynomial distribution based solutions that all come out of the API 579 document. And here's in the preferences, you can select as an option the Coreless burst model that will predict when the pipeline should fail. Now, another feature that people have wanted for a long time is the ability to not only tell you the answer in hours, but now it will plot in hours. So if you say, I like to display my lifetime in hours, then when you run AFGROW, instead of only just telling you at the end what the hours were, it will plot in terms of hours. The only thing to remember here is if you do several different analyses and you wanted to use hours for some and cycles for other, and you were overlaying them on the crack length versus cycles plot, then it would revert everything to cycles because it can't do both. So whenever you use this option, if you want to keep it that way, you need to keep all of them that way if you're overlaying the plots. Otherwise, it will revert back to cycles. But this feature has been something that we've been wanting to do for a long time, and now we have it. Now, the filled unloaded hole correction that we had for some time in the classic models for corner cracks at holes, we've now made that available for filled unloaded holes in the advanced solution. Now, we're trying to improve this, but for right now, I think it should be, if anything, it'll be a little bit conservative because we're using the correction for through cracks and we're applying it to part through cracks, and data that we've seen so far shows that that's probably going to be conservative, but at least gives you some benefit for the filled hole for part through cracks.